Hey guys, welcome back to more Karen stories. In this video, an insane Karen pulled a gun on me and then got into a high-speed police chase. Let's dive right into the video. The first one is titled, "Called cops for a neighbor, but now the cops think that I am a criminal. What the hell?" So my neighbor was having a possible OD, his wife ran to my house and screamed for me to call 911. He lost his phone and she could never keep hers for longer than a month. However, she asked that we not mention her by name. Her husband and her were regularly in trouble, but she was not involved in this since she just arrived at home at the same time I did. Now onto the 911 call. You can clearly hear someone giving me the information about the substances that he took, and I relate this to the operator along with other important information as she told me. However, when the ambulance and police arrived, it seems that someone, unsure who, stated that a female came from my house to that house and back to mine, which did not even happen. So while I am literally trying to get ready for bed, the police request my presence and start asking me what time I went over, what I was doing, etc. I explained I had not been over there, but a female came to me asking me to call 911 and that they would be able to hear her voice on the call. They seemed to think that I was over there partying with him or something. A little background, by the way, I have the note he left inside my vehicle the day before threatening me. Also messages on my phone, on Facebook, Instagram, etc. accusing me of calling the water company on him, on calling the county on him, and calling the cops on him and admitting that he robbed me and could do worse. This man is no friend of mine and I would never willingly be anywhere alone with him, but they were not hearing that. They just wanted me to say that I was there with him. Which is actually impossible since I was busy at work 2 towns away at the time he was partying. Anyway, since then, they pulled over my roommate and gave him a ticket for a crack in his windshield. The crack in question is literally a small divot where a rock hit it, and they've been cruising up and down our road the last 2 days. We live in the county where it usually takes 1 to 2 hours for them to arrive for an act in progress. It's a big county and understaffed office. They have had time to listen to the call, run background checks on me, and to know that I was not involved in any way, but I'm afraid that this is not gonna end anytime soon. What can I do? What are my options? I honestly feel like I'm now being harassed. Should I get an attorney on retainer or just wait it out? If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And now some comments from Reddit that unfortunately I forgot to screenshot, so I will just read them off the website. So someone said, agreed with the others about not speaking to them again without any attorney, but I imagine your covering for the wife might also be a factor, and or the neighbor/wife are trying to implicate you for whatever reason. Another user from Reddit said, attorney immediately, and don't speak to any type of law enforcement without your lawyer present. The police will use absolutely anything you say or do against you, regardless of your actual involvement. They have all the power to twist the situation any way they please if you're not protected by legal counsel, and they will use it. The #1 rule of dealing with the police is don't talk to the police, so please get a lawyer ASAP and follow their advice. And now we got an update to the story and it reads like this. So thank you everyone for the reminder. I do have cameras not on my door but on my cars. However, they were broken into recently, the note in my truck, and it showed when I arrived home, and it shows my neighbor's driveway and that my neighbor actually had a lot of company before I got home. And the police can have it if they want, but I'm not volunteering it. I don't want anyone else accused without cause. He is back from the hospital and the police are still watching but seem to be ignoring us now. I'm pretty sure I'm watching what's going to be a huge legal mess for a lot of people soon, and I added more cameras just in case. Thank you all for the advice. And now we got another update to this story. Well, things first got really interesting in the weeks following my last update. First off, my cameras ended up being incredibly useful. About 3 days after my last post, my neighbor, the one who OD'd, started screaming at his wife in their driveway around midnight. I had my window open and could hear him accusing her of getting him in trouble with the cops. She kept saying that she didn't do anything, but he would not listen, so I called 911 again. Yeah, I know, but someone had to. This time I made sure to record myself making the call on my phone as backup. While waiting for the police, I heard glass breaking and more yelling. The cops actually showed up pretty quick this time. I guess they were already watching the house. And here is where my camera saved my butt. The guy tried telling the cops that I'd been dealing drugs to him, and that's why he OD'd, but my cameras showed that not only had I never gone to his house that night, but they caught him on video throwing that threatening note in my truck the week before. The footage also showed him trying to break into my vehicles multiple times over the past month. His wife finally broke down and told the truth about everything. Turns out he had been forcing her to help him rob houses in the area, including mine. She had evidence on her phone of him bragging about it to his friends. The cops found stolen stuff from at least 6 different burglaries in their house. The police actually apologized to me. The sergeant admitted that they'd been watching me because someone, guess who, had been calling in anonymous tips saying that I was running a drug operation. They had to investigate, but once they saw all my evidence and heard his wife's statement, they knew he was just trying to frame me for reporting his actual crimes. He is now facing charges for burglary, filing false police reports, witness intimidation, and domestic violence. His wife moved in with her sister 2 counties over and is cooperating with the DA. She's been getting immunity in exchange for testifying against him and his friends who were involved in the burglaries. Also, I hired a lawyer anyway just to be safe, but I have not needed them yet. The DA's office has been surprisingly helpful. They actually want to use my case to show how he tried to intimidate witnesses and deflect from his own crimes. They are also investigating some of his friends who were regular visitors to his house. The police presence on our street has actually become reassuring instead of threatening. They increased patrols because they are worried about retaliation from his friends, and they are protective now rather than suspicious. One officer even gave me his direct number in case anything else happens. My roommate contested that bogus windshield ticket and got it dismissed. The judge also apparently gave the ticketing officer a hard time about it, asking if they had nothing better to do than write tickets for tiny cracks that were not even in the driver's line of sight. Also, I upgraded my security system even more, got cameras with better night vision, motion sensors and a doorbell camera. My homeowner's insurance is covering some of it since I filed a police report about the earlier break-ins, and my neighbors on the other side have started a neighborhood watch group. We are all keeping an eye out for each other now, but the best part? The water company and county violations he accused me of reporting? Well, it turns out it was his other next-door neighbor who reported him. They found out that he had been stealing water by tampering with the meter and had set up an illegal junkyard in his backyard. Those fines are the least of his problem now, though. I could have ignored his wife's plea for help that night, but I'm glad I didn't. She might not have gotten out of that situation otherwise. And the next one is titled, Karen got into a high-speed police chase after she pulled a gun on me for not selling her my house. So there is nothing better than coming home to a freshly renovated home, especially when it is your childhood home. Yes, not everyone is lucky enough to say that they are living their adult lives in the home they grew up in, but I was. Unfortunately, I inherited the house from my father after he passed away. My dad was pretty good at the maintenance part and upkeep of the house, but it was an older home. So as soon as I was financially able to, I had the house updated and renovated to make it more modern while keeping some of that old house charm. It was not a mansion by any means, but it was roomier than the average house. It was just one of those houses that had charm to it, you know. Plus, it was a great neighborhood, big roomy yards, a beautiful hillside at the end of the street. I was just lucky. Well, that is, until I had a new neighbor move in right next door to me. Right from the get-go, I knew she was an entitled Karen, like right away. In fact, my first time formally introducing myself to Karen was because she stole a lawnmower that I was borrowing from a friend. What had happened was, I was trying to keep up the maintenance in my yard. While I was at the store buying a few things, my friend dropped off his lawnmower and left it in my driveway in front of my backyard gate. He had taken a picture of it and texted it to me, so I knew where it was. Except when I got home, it was missing. I was searching all around my front yard for it because obviously I knew my friend had dropped it off. It was not common for things to get stolen in our neighborhood either, so I was a little perplexed. Well, that is, until I peeked around the corner and saw the lawnmower sitting on Karen's front porch. She thought someone left it on her property. But the driveway was at least 15 feet from her house, so I was not sure at this point. I went over immediately and rang her doorbell to try and get this figured out. She answered the door with a scowl on her face asking, "What do you want?" She thought I was a solicitor or something. I remained polite and explained that I was her next door neighbor. I pointed to the lawnmower on the other side of her porch and asked her where she got it. "There's been a misunderstanding." Well, I'm pretty sure that's the lawnmower my friend is letting me borrow. I even have a picture of where he left it in my driveway. "Oh yes, I took it from your driveway." I was surprised at her bluntness and lack of shame for taking something that was not hers. Well, I'll be taking it back since it does not belong to either of us. I would appreciate it if in the future you did not take things off my property, especially since this is not mine. I said, trying to be polite but also firm at the same time. I mean, what? Well, it's a damn shame neighbors don't help out each other anymore. I need to mow my backyard grass and see it sitting there. You know, in my other neighborhood my neighbor would have let me borrow it. But I guess since it's so important you and your friend can have it back, she said before shutting the door. Oh great, so she was entitled and passive-aggressive. I was shocked at her attitude and went to push the lawnmower back to my property. I texted my friend about the whole situation because honestly, I was still shocked. I'd never dealt with someone that bluntly rude. She did not even tell me her name or properly introduce herself. She did not even apologize. Anyways, I put the lawnmower in my backyard with the gate locked to prevent any other weird situations. While she did not steal any more items from my property, that certainly was not the end of her weird and entitled behavior. The next week it was raining, and now with the way that our houses were built, there was a corner in between ours and water would run down the landscape and pool in the sidewalk in front of her driveway. Well, when it rained real bad, sometimes the water would start pooling in front of my yard as well. Keep in mind though, this was a weekend and I had a couple of friends over. So my friends had their car parked in front of my yard, the part that was closer to her driveway. Me and my friends are having a drink and hanging out when there is a pounding on my door. I immediately got up and looked through the peephole to see that it was Karen. I turned around and looked at my friends apologizing for whatever was about to happen. Opening the door, Karen immediately started yelling, "You know, you young people are so inconsiderate. I do not give a crap if you want to have a little get-together, but how rude is it to let your guests park over there?" she said, pointing to my friend's car. "What is the problem? They are parked in front of my house." "Well, the problem is that it's raining and I don't want my car parked where the water gathers. It will ruin the tires. I could have parked there, but you did not even think to consider me." Well, no, I did not think to consider you because they are parked in front of my house and you have a driveway or a garage. Do you think that your tire is not waterproof or something? Get out of here. At this point, one of my male friends came up to see what all the commotion was about. Young people and they never think about anyone," she said as she stomped away, water splashing behind her. "That girl is effing crazy," my friend said. "Yeah, what? You should install some security cameras. Isn't that the one that freaked out over a lawnmower?" Well, I took my friend's advice and ended up getting a security camera system. It was the kind that connected to an app on your phone and you could manage it from the app. So I could make specific cameras and whatnot, record and save video just from my phone, and boy, I'm glad I did. And by the way, Ripe Stars, we actually have a similar system here at our house. However, it's mainly used to record whenever Dexter bullies Disney. After talking to another neighbor, they were having problems with Karen as well. She had taken some lawn decorations and tools out of their yard too, and when confronted about it, only returned the lawn decorations. According to other neighbor, she also had spit on their car because they parked too close to her yard, even though they were nowhere near her driveway or anything like that. And she had been complaining that the only reason she bought her house was because she wanted to escape harassment from her old neighbors, and all the other bigger and better houses were taken. This becomes significant shortly after. A couple weeks after the incident with my friends and a security camera being installed, there was a knock on my door. I should not have been surprised, but I was. It was Karen, and this time the situation escalated to something completely different. As I opened the door, Karen immediately spoke. "I want you to sell me your house." "Excuse me?" I spoke. "Yeah, I want you to sell me your house. I did my research and it has not even been on the market in decades. You're just some rich kids who inherited it. I have a family and I deserve it anyway. Why do you need such a big house for if you're not maximizing all the space and having a family?" Again, I was completely bewildered. The lack of shame from Karen was just astounding. Besides, why was it anybody else's business what I did with my house? It certainly was not Karen's. "Yeah, you're right. I'm just a kid who inherited it, but this house is special to me. I would never sell it, and especially not to someone like you. Besides, I've never seen any family at your house," I responded back. "Come on, I need this house more than you do. Besides, the only reason I got stuck with this house is because it was the only one on the street left." So I will give you $75,000 for it. My jaw dropped. $75K for an older home that was newly renovated and maintained beautifully? Get the hell out of here. Listen, just give me the house and there will not be any problems. I swear to God, I will make your life a living hell. Well, you get the hell out of here. It sounds like you've already been good at making people's lives a living hell anyway, I said and shut the door in her face. However, just as the door was about to close, a hard piece of metal blocked the door from closing. A gun. Yeah, Karen was crazy enough to pull out a gun on me. Now, one of my hands was in my sweatshirt pocket because it was cold. At this point, I was terrified because I was finding out that Karen was crazy, not just regular crazy though. She opened the door and looks me dead in the eye before telling me she has a concealed carry permit, so she could not get in trouble for brandishing a gun. I want to argue back and say that yes, she can, because this was not an act of self-defense. However, I did my best to retain my composure and secretly started recording the interaction from my pocket. I will consider your offer. Why don't you come back later this afternoon and I will contact a realtor to get some papers ready, I said, trying to sound believable. I'm sure my voice was shaking, but at the point I could not really notice. Karen safely locked her gun before tucking it back away in her waistband. That's what I thought, she simply said before walking away. I must admit I was surprised that she walked away so easily, but she really believed me. I immediately saved the recording and pulled other evidence from my security cameras, several instances of her snooping around, and even an instance of her yelling at the neighbor across the street could be seen on my security camera. After that, I immediately called the police to let them know what happened and that I had several videos that prove prior harassment and overall terrible behavior on Karen's part. The police dispatched several units in no time and several police cars came racing down the street. Several of them came to my house and started taking a report from me, and Karen was looking out of her window or something because she wasted no time in getting in her car and trying to take off. The other police units take off after her, and of course other people come out of their house to see what's going on. Karen sounded like a damn race car driver zipping through the neighborhood, and Karen ended up crashing her car on the highway after a short-lived 15-minute high-speed police chase. She ended up going so fast that she lost control of her car and crashed into a guardrail on the highway, ending the pursuit with her getting arrested. Not only was Karen charged with resisting arrest, but she was also charged with brandishing a firearm, reckless endangerment, and assault with intent to harm. Several other neighbors gave witness statements on Karen's behavior, backing up my claims along with the video evidence. In the end, Karen was found guilty on all charges and ended up serving time in jail. I know for a fact that she was denied bail, but I heard that she and her lawyer tried to submit an appeal request and that was also denied. Some stuff came up from her past as well, so that only solidified the charges. Karen's arrest went viral in our local news and a bunch of people were talking about their terrible experiences with Karen. It was nice to know it was not just me and that justice was served this time. Since then, Karen is still in jail finishing out her sentence and someone else has bought it and moved into her house. Our new neighbor is much nicer and way more fun and polite than Karen could ever be. Either way, the next one is titled "Racist Karen Kicks Me Out of Restaurant and Slaps Me for Being Black." I love how these kinds of stories had gained some popularity. I feel it really brings to light the kind of terrible behavior people think they can get away with exhibiting, and that no matter how close and cuddly media outlets like to make the world seem, the truth is a far shout from the far reality we see on these make-believe shows. So I got a front row seat to it all being black, and although things are not as bad as they were growing up in the 80s, they are still a long way off from being genuinely equal. I honestly don't think things will ever be equal, as there are some people out there that like to put down others just for being different, and I don't think that will ever change. I was a prime example of this when I was at school. The science teacher was a massive racist, and he was not silent about it either. Sure, he did not jump and shout that he hated black people, but he was very discriminatory in his behavior and took every opportunity to put me down. So much so, I almost quit out of school and abandoned my education because of him. Luckily, I didn't, and I followed my dream of opening a top-quality restaurant. Well, quality is subjective depending on who you talk to. The Duke and Duchess Kent would probably never grace my doors, but some drunk guy called Duke and all his mates coming out of the club late in the night would, and they would most likely say that my string of late-night restaurants were a godsend. So anyway, I saw a corner of the market that had only been tapped by Turkish takeaways and cheap burger bars. So I decided to take that desire for questionably cooked meats at the end of a night out and establish a decent place these people would relax, eat, and carry on drinking. Think of it like Wetherspoons or Yates, but with focus on food instead of drink. It grew quite popular in the Midlands of England, so much so that I opened a chain of them all around the south of England and grew pretty damn wealthy because of it. What I loved doing the most was touring across the country and checking in on these places from time to time, making sure the standards I had set in my business plan were being followed and the like. I also loved just hanging around these places and getting into some very heated, drunken discussions with the regulars to these places. It was like I was living one long party. That was until I ran into Karen. I had just opened up a restaurant in the shining jewel of the south coast along what is known as the Riviera of England, or the Jurassic Coast to most people, the one place so chock full of college students that pretty much every night was party night, and I knew my restaurant would boom every year. The wonderful coastal monstrosity that is Bournemouth. Or Bournemouth, I'm not sure. The only time I got to see it before was when I was picking a premises which used to be a bank, and then a few times during renovations and conversion into a restaurant. I sadly missed the grand opening, but I was able to free up some time so that I could get down and inspect the restaurant a couple months after it opened. Because of my absence, I left most of the work to one of my partners who had done a bang-up job of getting everything organized and ready. With one exception, and this is probably my partner's biggest oversight. He hired a Karen, and not just any Karen, but a racist Karen. Obviously, you can never tell if someone is a racist until they are given the opportunity to be so, and during job interviews, people are rarely ever honest about who they really are and what they are really like. So far as I knew, Karen was an okay person. The only thing I knew about Karen was that she was pretty good at managing my new restaurant. The numbers looked good, customer feedback was, well, as good and reliable as any drunken rambling, but the numbers and charts did not lie. I was looking forward to heading down to Bournemouth to meet Karen and the rest of the team at the new restaurant. I thought I would be all sneaky about it, which was probably my first mistake. I thought I could go all undercover boss and get a look at the place without people rolling out the red carpet after having the time to prepare for my visit. I have found that you cannot get a true feel of the place when people are aware that you are the owner and to expect your arrival. The staff have the habit of behaving a little more professional than they normally would, and things would be handled with a lot more care. So, undercover boss mode engaged, I headed down south for Bournemouth to what I hope would be a great couple days getting to know new people. Obviously, that did not happen, else I would not be on here sharing my racist Karen story. The evening started off okay. When you run a late-night refuge for the hungry drunkards, you have to expect some trouble to arise on occasions. Alcohol has this nasty habit of bringing out the worst in some people, but for the most part the doormen we hire are professional security guards. I met with the two that were on that night, I spoke to them for a little while, got to know a little about them and their job. Everything's going great, that is until I enter the restaurant and I'm left standing around for quite some time. I've always made sure that the staff training includes aspects on how to spot a troublemaker and how to deal with them, which is mostly call the security and have the troublemaker expunged, and there are certain procedures you follow to avoid aggravating the suspected troublemaker. All are welcome in my restaurant, so as long as you behave, knowing how to handle people is one of the musts for working here. Needless to say, Karen clocked me and proceeded to behave in a very unprofessional and not at all like what I saw laid out in the training regime I had put together by professionals. From the moment she saw me, I knew she had a problem and left me standing at the greeter's podium for over 20 minutes. She even went so far as to usher in a group of people that came after me to a table. I asked her why she was ignoring me and why the other group was tabled first, and she said, "You're one person, they were 5. We don't currently have a table for one person." There was no sir, no please, no thank you, no politeness at all that I would expect from one of my hosts. I was a little miffed, but I did not get angry. She might have been genuine in her response and she might have had a busy night. Stress can do strange things to people. So I went up to the bar to get a drink, as all are welcome to do so when they come in. They can wait to be seated or just chill at the bar and be seated later. No sooner did I take a step than Karen burst out of the shadows saying, "Where are you going? You have to wait here to be seated." The aggression in her voice surprised me. I had done and said nothing to offend her. "I'm allowed to go to the bar," I tell her. "No, you're not," she declares. "Get back or I will have you kicked out." "For what?" I asked her, still doing my best to remain calm. She simply just stared at me and says the good old, "We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone, so I suggest you get back and wait to be shown to a table." At this point I had enough. "Look, Mrs. Karen, I'm the owner of this restaurant and you're behaving unprofessionally." was what I wanted to say, but I never got the chance. She slapped me hard across the face, I can still feel the sting of it now, and shouts for security. "Help! This dark person is attacking me!" she calls out. I was stunned. In all my years of having to face racism, in all its forms, people rarely actually ever called me the N-word. It's not the sort of thing you would normally hear here in England. They had other words they used here. The security comes running and look confused when they see me, and I look at them like, what the hell? Karen is ranting at the security guard, demanding that I be kicked out and that I was a troublemaker. No ma'am, he's the owner. The security tells Karen. Impossible, he's black. I was saddened by this turn of events, but I was used to it and let it run off like water on a duck's back. I asked the security to escort Karen from my restaurant, which made her anger flare even more, and she is calling me every name under the sun as she is being dragged out. But that's not the end of it. For about an hour she is outside, shouting and ranting, throwing things at my security staff, doing her best to turn away my customers who, being drunk, just laugh at her and continue on in for some food. In the end, I had to call the police, and when they asked me if I wanted to press charges, I was like, F yes, she needs to understand racism should not be tolerated. In the end, she was fined for the damages she caused from throwing a traffic cone at my building and knocking over a post. Seriously, she was fined hundreds for knocking over a post. I don't think the judge liked racists either. She was then sent to jail for 12 months for assaulting me and my security staff, and on top of all of that, she had to attend a sensitivity course for her racism. She's probably still there now, to be honest. And before I let you guys go, we will read one last story from r/petty revenge that you don't want to miss. It is titled Blinded by the Light. So a few years ago, I was doing lights at a party in a hotel ballroom. It was a favor for a friend of a friend, but I take it very seriously. So we had 8 guys setting up the lighting grid with robotic lights and hooked up to a console to control them. We had a couple of no-show workers, so we were under the gun to get it up and running with time to program. 10 minutes before doors, I realized I had not drunk any water at all day, and we were behind the clock. I went to the snooty bartender and asked for a seltzer. He looked up at me in my show blacks in disgust, rolling his eyes, and told me, no, none of this is for staff, and I could drink tap water from the kitchen. Okay, I thought as I went back to the console and programmed up a quick cue where a light at random will zoom all the way in at maximum brightness and hit that particular bartender's station every 2 minutes at 100,000 lumens for 5 seconds. After 1 hour of this, he came over and asked me if I could turn the lights down. He looked sweaty and harried as he was having a hard time focusing. But I just said, so sorry sir, cannot do. The client wants these lights and it's not for staff to decide. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again tomorrow.